Hello, everyone. It's great to be back for another virtual session at APS London 2022. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about product page optimization and custom product pages on the new iOS 15 App Store, what you need to know, how they work, and even what some of the limitations are based on our experience working with many clients using the new features. We're also going to talk about some workarounds in terms of testing for things that Apple doesn't quite allow you to do yet in iOS 15. But first, I want to talk to you a little bit about who I am and why I'm here. So first of all, my name is Dave Bell. I'm the CEO of GummyCube. I've been involved in mobile apps and mobile games going all the way back to 1999, when you had to build apps on feature phones and get carriers to distribute apps on their networks. Been involved in direct-to-consumer distribution at a company called Playphone that sold to SoftBank almost a decade ago. And we've been working at GummyCube for the last 12 years to build great ASO technology and really understand how the App Store and Play Stores work and how we can build optimizations that are most effective, that have the best results. First, getting directly into A/B testing and a little bit of primer, because I know some people who might be watching are a little bit more advanced than others. We want to make sure we cover all ends of the spectrum. So first, just going to talk a little bit about how we create tests that really do provide actionable insights and results. Number one, we know that A/B testing is a fundamental part of App Store optimization and also paid UA campaigns. At the end of the day, one of the things that's unique about the world of mobile is that you only get one landing page or one area where you can have a landing page, and that's inside the store. And being able to optimize that and being able to make it most efficient has a huge impact on your cost of user acquisition and the organic coefficients that you pull out of the store as you scale up. A/B testing really allows developers to test different variations of both their creative as well as their metadata. I know that a lot of people, when they think of A/B testing, immediately think about testing screenshots, but at least we found that testing metadata and calls to action and all these other elements of the page also can have a big impact as well. And we want to really use this as a way to empower data-driven decisions, right, regarding mobile marketing, regarding product marketing, and ASO strategy. In terms of how we A/B test, there are a number of ways that one can A/B test, and some of them are specific to the platforms, the actual stores that you're marketing your app on, and some are not. Google Play Experiments, it's a historically great way to A/B test on the Google Play Store. You're A/B testing essentially your store listing experience, and really getting an aggregate read of how all traffic that hits that page converts against different variants. With Apple's new product page optimization, you can do similar, but not exactly the same things on the Apple App Store, meaning there are certain elements on Apple's product page optimization that you can test and other elements that you can't. And finally, there are external platforms. Like, for example, we have a platform called SPLITCUBE where you can launch virtual App Store listings in the App Store and Google Play Store. You can send traffic to those pages, A/B test, understand user behavior, and really get reads on things that you can't get using the native tools, particularly if you're interested in optimizing paid user acquisition. Now, when you're running A/B testing, it's also very important to understand what really affects your test results. Not all traffic is created equal. Every different traffic source can have different user behavior based on where users come from, the messaging and ads, and what the expectations are once they land on your store listing. It's important when you're thinking about doing an A/B test to ask questions. Am I launching this test at the right time? Are my traffic sources changing soon? Is the test running long enough? Has my organic ranking shifted? Are there any changes in impressions once I apply a test? All these things are important because when you're A/B testing, there will be outliers, just like there are sometimes outliers when you measure ASO as a whole, like seasonality and increases or decreases in paid user acquisition. In the case of measuring an A/B test, it's important to understand what your average impressions were before and after, because if there was a big spike after you deploy, your conversion rate might appear to be down, but in reality, you just had a surge of impressions from a different source that didn't convert as well. There are a lot of things that can impact your read, and that's why you have to pay attention to these external variables. Now, we also want to talk about the channels that we use for A/B testing, and meaning the platforms we use for A/B testing in reality. people are very familiar with A/B testing on the Google Play Store. Obviously, it's very flexible. You can test any element of the store listing virtually. Icons, screenshots, feature videos, feature graphics, the descriptions, they're all there. You can run a maximum of 5 localized experiments at once. Again, the concept of localization here applies to Google Play, which is nice. And you can really customize the traffic distribution across those pages. The challenge with the Google Play experiment is, one, it's not perfectly representative of what will happen on the Apple App Store, obviously, because these two stores have different user interfaces. You can't expect something that works on Google Play to work on Apple, although there are some things that very frequently do translate over. The other thing that's important to know is that a Google Play experiment doesn't distinguish between paid and organic traffic. And because paid and organic traffic have very different user experiences, it's important to realize what it is that you're testing, right? If you're testing during a time period where 70% of your traffic is coming from Facebook, you're really getting a read on how that traffic behaves and converts more than you're getting a read on other channels or even organic, and vice versa applies as well. When you look at testing on iOS, obviously we all know with iOS 15, Apple introduced native A/B testing capabilities. There are 2 different ways that you can now manipulate your store listings. There's product page optimization and custom product pages. We'll get to both of those individually. But really, these new additions are meant to create a more customizable A/B testing environment for people who want to optimize the App Store, and also enhance how you're tracking and converting on paid traffic, particularly with custom product pages, where now you might be able to have more than one destination, more than one set of messaging for traffic that you're coming in, depending on the campaigns that you're running. So now that we've experienced these additions, now that we've worked with them for many, many, many weeks, I want to talk a little bit about what we've learned about how this works, particularly for iOS product page optimization. So number one, Apple's A/B testing platform lets you conduct A/B testing on select metadata and creative assets directly through Apple. You can test changes on icons. There are caveats to that. You can test changes on screenshots, and you can also A/B test promotional text. You can compare up to 3 variants. There's less variants available on Apple versus Google. And you can apply localized treatments to what you test in other countries, although there are some caveats about how you measure from one country to another when you're running an A/B test, which I'll also get into. And of course, we want to analyze what treatments drive the highest user engagement and conversion. So in terms of custom product pages in particular, right? You can customize variations to really capture broad and diverse audience base. You can look at your features and break out custom product pages for each feature. You can create custom URLs for each page. So if you have a campaign on Facebook promoting jobs and another campaign on a different ad network promoting another feature of your app, you can actually go and you can have different screenshots and different presentations for those different features, depending on how users are coming in and what you're selling to them in your advertising. You can have up to 35 of these individual pages, and really you can submit treatments at any time without having to release a new app update. But of course, Apple has to review any treatments that you wish to apply at some point. So there is a review period, even though that review period is not connected to an app submission anymore. So, you know, a lot of people were very excited when Apple introduced product page optimization and CPPs, and we know why. We've been in the ASO space for 12 years, and it's always exciting when we finally have the opportunity to do native testing in the iOS environment. But was it really everything we expected? What did we find once we got in there under the hood, as part of Apple's first release of this new feature? So there are some restrictions that you need to be aware of as you're doing planning, especially if you want to test frequently. If you want to test new concepts that might be sensitive to wide user rollouts, there are some restrictions and challenges there. If you want to test multiple territories at the same time or measure a single territory, there are limitations that you need to be aware of. And if you want to test more than just screenshots, app icons, and promo text, you can't do that, right? Those are the only things that you can test right now in CPP and with product page optimization. So having said that, here are the limitations that we've discovered, right? Number one, you can only run one test at a time. And everyone wants to kind of have a schedule of A/B testing and they want to make it as efficient as possible. Well, with A/B testing on the Apple App Store, you can do one test at a time. If you want to run a test for multiple territories and isolate those territories, you have to run tests in a linear way separately at different times. You can't run the same test in different territories and get reporting back on a per territory basis. There are limits, as I said earlier, to what you can test. You can only run screenshots, icons, preview videos. You can run promotional text as well. And the other challenge is if you do want to A/B test icons, icons are still tied to your binary. So if you want to A/B test an icon, you do have to do a release of your app. Those variants have to be incorporated in the binary for the formal build release to be eligible for test setup. So in reality, you can test screenshots. There's a process to that. You can test video. There's a process to that, promotional text, but icons are a little bit locked to a release still. Metadata testing is simply not available. And, we found that, in Google Play A/B testing, sometimes, the language in the short description, for example, language on Apple, when you're looking at the subtitle, can be very valuable to A/B test and experiment with new messaging, because that can improve conversion and even get you ranked for some better keywords. But metadata testing is not available as of today on PPO. On the data side of product page optimization, number one, A/B tests are served to iOS 15 users only. So there's going to be about a 20% discrepancy right now based on the percentage of users who have upgraded to iOS 15 versus people who are still on previous versions of the operating system. You cannot parse through international metrics. As I alluded to earlier, if you want to run a test in multiple territories, all metrics come back in aggregate. So that makes individual country performance difficult to measure unless you run a separate test per territory, which you have to run back to back and you can't run simultaneously. So you get creative approved, that takes a week and a half, whatever timeline that is. You run the test in the US, that takes 14 days. You stop that test, you run the same test in the UK, that takes 14 days. You can't run them at the same time. And if you do run them at the same time, all the metrics are combined together, so you can't differentiate how one country performs differently than another. And as we all know, culturalization is an important part of store optimization. Some territories prefer different graphics, some have different trends in terms of volume that drives feature adoption. And so we want to be careful with that and just be aware of how we have to manage those tests. There's also a lengthier review process. So, Apple and Google will review every screenshot, every test that you want to run before you can launch it. And it actually, in some cases, has been taking longer to review those than it does an app submission. So just prepare for that, to wait in line for a little while as you're waiting for Apple to review your creatives. There are also some limitations on the CPP side. So number one, when you're running a custom product page, essentially what you're doing is you're saying, look, I have a specific channel, or I have a specific campaign within a channel. Maybe it has certain messaging, maybe it focuses on a certain feature, and I want those users to go to the most relevant landing page possible. Totally understand why you'd want to do that. But it also means that you have smaller slices of traffic going to each one of these pages. So if you ever think about, well, how do we test this? Well, there are a couple things to keep in mind. Your main product store page, your main product page can be A/B tested, but CPPs can't be in the same way. And when you're launching a CPP, if you want to A/B test, you actually have to almost create two CPPs and divide your traffic among them, and then see how each one converts, and then decide what the winner is. So your primary product listing doesn't have has different testing functionality than CPP. Custom product pages are also not 100% customizable. Developers can only tailor the promotional text, screenshots, and videos. So again, that metadata that I was mentioning earlier that you can't A/B test, that's actually locked down as part of a CPP as well. You're not going to be able to change those as easily. You'll still have to go through a release process. When you're thinking about product page optimization, there's also some limits to insight and data. And I mentioned some of these things earlier, but just to really recap on them. One, privacy changes do impact reporting, meaning, when you're sending traffic in from channels, if people have opted out to track their impressions, you're going to see some impressions drop between the channel and the page. You're going to see some degree of cannibalization of external traffic as external channels compete for a share of an ad. What we mean by this is if you're running any kind of custom product page trying to optimize, you're really dividing that traffic among those product pages from wherever you're sending it from. So you have a smaller group of users hitting each page. You also have to look at just the accuracy of data, right? Reporting and analytics can vary a lot between platforms. And so we do see metrics that seem to be uneven when you look at your CPP metrics in the Apple dashboard versus what you see in external traffic due to some of Apple's privacy and other tracking issues. We also note that it has a lengthier review process, at least in our experience, CPPs have had a lengthier review process than PPOs or product page optimization A/B testing. So how do we get around some of these limitations, right? What does SPLITCUBE do in order to get the most testing in and get the most accurate data in? Well, number one, we still look at Google Play, and there are still things that we can learn from Google Play and apply them to iOS. Not everything, but certain things. General performance insights around what feature might have the most demand in most categories can apply. Feature prioritization can apply. What doesn't tend to apply across Apple and Google is layouts, obviously, because Apple has a very different looking store and layout inside their search results than Google Play. So it's important to remember these platforms are not one-to-one, but with Google, you can A/B test your description. Generally, a description is something where if you get a win on Google Play, it might also be a winner on Apple because that part of the layout is not so different for users who see it. So those are just some things to keep in mind. There's also external A/B testing. So, obviously, when we think about external A/B testing, there are a lot of caveats to keep in mind, right? Paid and organic traffic don't behave the same way. It's important just to understand what an external testing platform does and how it works. We're going to just talk about SPLITCUBE, which is our external testing platform that we use for all of our partners because we know how it works really well. And just in terms of, why we would want to do external testing. So, number one, we have the ability to really, configure traffic distribution in any way that we like on a test. We have the ability to execute simultaneous multivariate testing across territories, so we can actually get testing done much faster. You don't have to wait in line for approvals. You can do things very quickly and simultaneously. We also have the ability to understand user behavior on store listings, like whether people are clicking on your screenshots or not. In addition to conversions. And that's actually really important. And it's insights that Apple and Google don't give you. And, you can really run some testing and get some data that might not be possible using the live store tests. And, when you're looking at external testing this way, you can test all metadata in creatives on iOS and Google Play. As I said, there's no review needed. We've worked with a lot of partners who say, hey, we're considering launching a new app in the store. How do we A/B test ideas for that new app before we launch it? And external testing platforms can be a great way to ideate and understand what positioning of an app will have a better return on investment, will be less expensive from a cost acquisition standpoint. And so you can also experiment with how your app performs in competitive environments. So when I say competitive environments, what I mean is Apple and Google let you test the store listing, but they don't let you test, for example, the search listing, where users are making a choice between your app and another app. And knowing how you can convince users to click your app instead of your competitor is an important point of why an app might rise up in the rankings as you increase conversion within the search result. And so all of those things you can do on external testing platforms. At the end of the day, there are no silver bullets to A/B testing, but when you look at all the resources that you have available, from Apple's new features to Google Play's historically available features to what you can do with external platforms, you have a lot of resources at your disposal. In terms of what to consider when you're running an external platform, well, one, paid and organic user behavior is not the same. Right? Anyone who tells you that driving Facebook traffic, no matter how well you target the audience to a product page and essentially deploy that because users will behave the same way across all channels, is not being forthcoming. That's not how it works. It's important to evaluate once you deploy a test, regardless of the platform that you tested on. How did that deployment affect each channel individually? How did it affect organics? And did some channels have a different result than others? Very important to protect your performance. Some external testing platforms or some external data platforms don't really use true mobile data. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times you're looking at platforms like DataCube, for example, our platform, to determine what feature has the most organic demand and how should we prioritize a certain feature in our screenshots over another feature. Well, not every platform has the same data in terms of search volume. And it's important to know where that data comes from, because data from web or data from paid search does not equate to demand organically if you're really trying to understand what organic demand for a product or feature looks like in the store. And of course, full deployments are often necessary for validation of results. Ultimately, the content does have to go live in the store to see results. So finally, a little bit about best practices. Number one, obviously, user control, no matter what the platform is, and don't try to change too many variables at once. I talk to a lot of people who are running A/B testing, and then I find out, oh, they updated their metadata while they were running an A/B test, or changed another variable. And if you do that, you're not going to get a clean read, right? Because every one of these things can impact your traffic and it can impact your conversion. So decide what you're going to want to test, create a plan, create a schedule, make sure everyone understands that schedule so you don't have any collisions in terms of things that you're changing. Account for known limitations about what you're testing and what you can test and the best way to test. And always iterate and plan for changes and differentiate between paid and organic user behavior. If a partner comes to me and says, I want to optimize my Facebook traffic, we'll find a way to do that. If a partner comes to me and says, I need to optimize my organic traffic because my rankings are decreasing in the App Store, you're probably not going to use Facebook traffic to determine how to do that, because it has nothing to do with that user behavior. So those are just important things to keep in mind. So in summary, A/B testing is a very fundamental part of ASO and paid campaign process, product page optimization and CPP and Google experiments. While they try, they can't always give us the full picture. And so while there are no silver bullets, when you look at what Apple and Google offer, when you look at what you can possibly glean in terms of insights from external testing platforms, the tools are available to really improve your performance. The challenge is knowing how to use those tools, knowing the advantages and disadvantages, and running the right tests on the right platforms. Anyway, it's been a pleasure being here at our promo summit. My name is Dave Bell. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at dave@gummicube.com. You can find us on social media, Twitter at GummyCube, LinkedIn at GummyCube. And of course, you can always reach out to our team at info@gummicube.com if you'd like to chat. It's been great, and we'll see you at APS New York. Thanks a lot.